Welcome, honored viewers, to another epic journey into the shadows of ancient history. We all know King David as the giant slayer, a glorious monarch destined for the grand throne. But history hides a dark truth. His reign began not in a palace, but in a damp, lonely cave. Hunted by a mad king, David was surrounded by desperate outcasts and deeply broken men. How did this dark abyss forge the greatest warriors? Let us step into the shadows together. Around the 10th century before Christ, the harsh Judean desert winds howled with relentless fury. According to ancient records, a young shepherd boy had once achieved unimaginable glory. He fearlessly stepped onto the battlefield and struck down the mighty Philistine giant, Goliath. The people of Israel celebrated his grand victory with joyous songs and endless admiration. The prophet Samuel had even anointed him, choosing him as the future ruler of the nation. It seemed his path was paved with absolute triumph, leading straight to the royal throne of power. However, destiny often writes its most profound chapters in the darkest and coldest of places. The reigning monarch, King Saul, was consumed by overwhelming paranoia and bitter jealousy. Historical texts reveal that the king's mind descended into a terrifying state of madness. He unleashed his elite royal guards, ordering a merciless manhunt across the desolate lands. The beloved hero was suddenly stripped of all his honor, becoming a desperate fugitive. David fled into the unforgiving wilderness, leaving behind his family and his former life. He ran until his strength faded, stumbling into the vast hidden limestone caves of Adullam. This massive underground labyrinth was a place of deep isolation, far from civilization. The air inside was heavy and damp, smelling of ancient dust and forgotten sorrowful memories. He sat alone in the crushing darkness, feeling the terrifying weight of his shattered future. Every echoing drop of water reminded him of the constant danger lurking outside the cavern. His clothes were torn and covered in thick mud, a very stark contrast to his past glorious triumphs. At this exact moment, one must wonder about the fragile nature of human success and ambition. If your greatest victory turned into a nightmare of survival, would your spirit completely break? David firmly grasped his weathered sword, knowing that King Saul's soldiers were searching the hills above. The silence of the cave was deafening, amplifying his deep exhaustion and profound loneliness. He had lost the royal court, his beloved friend Jonathan, and his rightful place in society. Yet the deep isolation of Adullam was about to be broken by an unexpected gathering. The shadows near the cave entrance began to shift, revealing the arrival of desperate strangers. They were not noble generals or brave soldiers coming to pledge their loyalty to the chosen king. Instead, the cavern slowly filled with the outcasts and the deeply rejected members of society. Ancient scrolls tell us that 400 men gathered in that suffocating, miserable darkness. These were desperate men, crippled by massive debts, running from ruthless creditors and harsh punishments. Others were deeply bitter, harboring intense anger against King Saul's oppressive and cruel regime. They wore filthy rags, carrying broken farming tools and rusted daggers as their only weapons. The atmosphere inside the cave quickly turned into a chaotic storm of complaints and misery. Imagine the overwhelming pressure placed upon a young man who was already running for his life. He needed a strong army, but destiny handed him a fractured group of broken, hopeless failures. Arguments erupted in the dim firelight as these desperate souls fought over scraps of food. The terrible stench of sweat, sickness, and unwashed bodies made the enclosed space almost unbearable. David sat silently in the corner, watching this miserable crowd of angry, lost individuals. They looked at him not as a glorious savior, but simply as another rebel hiding from the law. Every face illuminated by the flickering flames reflected a lifetime of brutal hardship. Their voices echoed against the limestone walls, creating a terrifying chorus of pure despair. If he failed to control them, a violent mutiny would surely erupt within the underground camp. The threat of King Saul's army outside was suddenly matched by the dangerous tension inside. A true leader is often defined not by the resources they have, but by the chaos they manage. Many men would have easily given up, abandoning these wretched outcasts to save themselves. But the young fugitive understood that these forgotten people were his only remaining companions. He observed their deep wounds, both physical and mental, realizing they needed a vital purpose. The heavy darkness of Adullam threatened to completely consume whatever hope was left in them. To survive, he had to somehow transform this volatile mob into a disciplined and unified force. He slowly stood up, letting the dim campfire light reveal his calm and determined expression. He did not shout to overpower their angry voices or use his sword to demand their obedience. Instead, he reached for the only valuable possession he had managed to save from his old life. It was an ancient wooden lyre, an instrument of peace in a world entirely consumed by war. The loud murmurs of the angry crowd began to fade as they carefully watched him tune the worn strings. This moment marks a profound psychological shift in the brutal history of the ancient kingdom. He was about to fight the deepest darkness, not with steel, but with an unshakable inner faith. The first gentle notes of the wooden lyre echoed through the vast and intimidating cavern halls. It was a sound so incredibly pure that it quickly commanded the attention of every outcast. He closed his eyes, ignoring the terrible smell and the frightening reality of their situation. According to the ancient Psalms, he poured his agonizing pain into a beautiful and raw melody. His voice resonated clearly, slicing through the heavy atmosphere of hatred and bitter resentment. He sang about finding an impenetrable fortress, not made of stone, but forged entirely by faith. He boldly declared with absolute certainty that his heart was steadfast despite the crumbling world. The words of his song were not complaints about the mad king or the cruel unfairness of life. Instead, he chose to praise the divine power that watched over them in the deepest underground. The 400 men stood completely frozen, captivated by the pure power of his spirit. Tears began to slowly wash away the thick layers of dirt on the faces of hardened criminals. They realized that true royalty does not require a golden crown or a luxurious palace chamber. True royalty is the ability to shine a bright light when all else is covered in deep shadows. His calm spirit began to slowly dismantle their deep anxiety, fear, and bitter paranoia. The chaotic energy of the rebel mob was quickly transforming into a silent reverence. When you are trapped in your own personal cave of despair, what song do you choose to sing aloud? The firelight danced gracefully across their rugged faces, revealing a profound inner awakening. They had entered this dark cavern as miserable losers, rejected and hated by their nation. But listening to this future king, they felt a strange and powerful sense of belonging and worth. He shared his meager rations of dry bread, treating these violent outcasts like his own brothers. By accepting them in their lowest state, he forged an incredibly unbreakable bond of loyalty. This profound psychological mastery is what truly separates a common warlord from a great king. The music slowly stopped, leaving a sacred and heavy silence lingering in the dusty, damp air. David opened his eyes, looking directly at the ragged men who would soon become his mighty army. He spoke with a firm, commanding voice, establishing the absolute rules of their new community. There would be no more mindless stealing, no more bitter fighting, and no more cowardly hiding. They began to organize the camp, establishing proper guard duties and securing the large gates. Broken farming tools were carefully heated over the roaring fire and then forged into weapons. Desperate men who once ran from their shadows were now learning the disciplined arts of lethal combat. The stinking Cave of Adullam was no longer a miserable graveyard for the desperately hopeless. It had miraculously become a blazing furnace, designed to forge the strongest steel of character. Historians note that these exact men later became the legendary warriors of the kingdom. They would quickly conquer fortified cities and defeat the most terrifying giant enemies. The epic journey from the bottom of society to the height of glory started in this darkness. David had successfully passed the ultimate test of leadership during his most vulnerable moment. He proved that external authority means nothing without profound internal resilience and courage. King Saul had an entire professional army, but he was completely paralyzed by his own madness. Meanwhile, the brave young fugitive had only 400 outcasts, but he possessed a clear vision. As the cold night winds howled violently outside the cave, a fierce new hope burned brightly inside. They were no longer victims of fate. They were the unstoppable architects of their destiny. The bright rising sun eventually pierced through the heavy darkness of the vast, ancient cavern. The terrified outcasts were entirely replaced by an organized and loyal fighting unit. They bravely stood firmly side by side, gripping their sharpened weapons with profound determination. Every single man had discovered a noble purpose that completely transcended their bitter past. He stood before his warriors as a true king, projecting incredible strength and calm authority. Scholars observe that this crucial moment marked the absolute birth of his legendary army. The dark, suffocating cave was fully transformed into an extraordinary training ground. These previously broken men would completely follow their brave leader into epic battles. It proved that true greatness never magically appears without immense struggle and desperate pain. You must first learn how to brilliantly survive the shadows before you can proudly wear the crown. The terrible fear of King Saul gradually completely faded away from their hardened minds. They fully realized that the brutal wilderness was their greatest and most valuable advantage. David brilliantly trained them to use the rocky terrain for highly lethal guerrilla warfare. The mighty men of Adullam became a devastating and unstoppable force across the nation. They learned to move completely silently through the deepest shadows, striking with deadly precision. A magnificent legacy of deep loyalty was firmly forged in that terrifying cavern. When the young hero finally stepped out into the blinding sunlight, he was no longer a victim. He was a visionary commander, leading the most incredibly fierce battalion in history. The mad King Saul would soon absolutely tremble at the growing power of this unstoppable force. The epic triumph of King David started precisely when he lost absolutely everything he had. His profound resilience became the unbreakable foundation of a majestic empire. This epic story reminds us that our darkest moments are frequently our greatest opportunities. If you can sing a song of faith while surrounded by despair, you can truly conquer anything. The dark shadows of the cavern could not consume the brilliant light burning fiercely within his soul. He walked confidently toward his grand destiny, completely followed by his mighty warriors. The dark Cave of Adullam proves that truly great leaders are always forged in the most desperate times. Could you maintain your strong faith and sanity if society completely abandoned you? Share below. Please make sure to like, share, and absolutely subscribe to our channel for more thrilling histories.